Evelyn didn't cry loudly. It wasn't dramatic or performative. It was the kind of crying that comes when someone has held everything in for too long and finally realizes there is no more strength left to keep it sealed. Emma stayed still, watching her. For years, she had only known Grandma Evelyn as the woman who always had answers. The one who fixed things. The one who smoothed conflict before it became chaos. But tonight, she wasn't that person anymore. She was just a woman sitting in a small retirement room by the sea, carrying the weight of decisions that never stopped echoing back. Evelyn wiped her face slowly. "I didn't leave because I stopped loving you," she said softly. "I left because I didn't know how to stay without breaking what little peace you still had left." Emma shook her head. "But peace built on silence isn't peace." That line landed between them and stayed there. Evelyn nodded once. "I know that now." A long silence followed. The kind that doesn't feel empty, but full, like both of them were finally hearing everything they had avoided for years. Then Emma asked the question that had been sitting behind everything else since she left the wedding. "What happens now?" Evelyn looked at her for a long moment. "That depends on what you want your life to look like when the anger runs out of energy." Emma exhaled slowly. "That's the problem," she said. "I don't think the anger is the only thing I lost tonight. I lost the version of my life I thought I was living." Evelyn's voice softened. "Then don't build a new one alone." Emma frowned slightly. "You mean my mother?" "I mean all of you," Evelyn said. "Linda, Robert, even Daniel." Emma almost laughed at that last name. "You think Daniel wants to be part of this?" Evelyn gave a small, tired smile. "If he walked into your life knowing only the version of you presented at that wedding, then he is already involved. The truth just makes it real." Emma looked away, processing that. For the first time since everything collapsed, she wasn't thinking about escape. She was thinking about reconstruction, not of the past, but of whatever came next. Her phone buzzed again. "Daniel." She hesitated before answering. His voice came through immediately, calm but awake. "Are you safe?" "Yes," she said. A pause. "Are you coming back tonight?" Emma looked at Evelyn, then at the window, then at herself in the reflection. "I don't know what I'm coming back to yet." Daniel didn't rush her. "That's okay. Just don't disappear inside all of this. Talk to me when you can." Emma closed her eyes briefly. "I will." She ended the call and sat back down. Evelyn watched her carefully. "He's a good man." Emma nodded. "I think so too." "And you're scared of that?" Emma gave a small, honest laugh. "I'm scared of everything right now." Evelyn leaned back slightly. "That's normal after truth arrives all at once. It doesn't organize itself neatly. It spills everywhere before it settles." Emma looked at her. "You make it sound like weather." Evelyn smiled faintly. "It is. Storms don't ask permission." Another quiet moment passed. Then Emma stood. "I want to take you somewhere." Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "Now?" "Yes." "Where?" Emma hesitated. "Home." The word felt different than it used to. Not just a place. A responsibility. Evelyn studied her. "I left for a reason." "I know," Emma said. "But you didn't leave because you were done being family. You left because you thought family needed distance to survive. I think it needs something else now." Evelyn's voice was careful. "And what is that?" Emma met her eyes. "Truth. Even when it's uncomfortable. Especially then." Evelyn didn't respond immediately. Then she slowly stood. Not because she had fully decided, but because for the first time, she wasn't deciding alone. The drive back to the city was different. Not lighter, but quieter in a different way. Evelyn sat in the passenger seat, watching the road pass like she was seeing the world from the outside of it for the first time in years. Emma drove with both hands on the wheel again, but this time not from panic. From direction. When they reached Linda and Robert's house, the porch light was still on. They were waiting. Not sleeping. Waiting. Like they had known this night wasn't finished. Emma parked. No one moved for a moment. Then Evelyn spoke. "I don't know what version of me is waiting inside that house anymore." Emma turned slightly. "Neither do they." Evelyn nodded slowly. "That might be the most honest thing anyone has said tonight." They got out of the car together. Inside, the living room was unchanged, but the energy was completely different. Linda stood immediately when she saw them. Robert was behind her, tired in a way that had nothing to do with age. Linda's voice cracked instantly. "Mom." Evelyn held up a hand gently. "Don't start there." That stopped her. Emma stepped forward first. "I'm not here to restart the past," she said. "I'm here because it already restarted itself." Robert nodded slowly. "That's fair." Linda looked between all of them. What do we do now? Emma didn't answer immediately, because for the first time, no one in the room had a hidden version of the truth anymore. Just consequences. Evelyn finally spoke. We stopped protecting each other from reality. That is how this started. That is how it continues. Linda swallowed. And Emma? Emma looked at her mother. We stopped pretending I was never going to find out. Silence. Then Emma added something quieter. And we stopped pretending I didn't already lose years I can't get back. Linda's eyes filled. I'm sorry. Emma nodded. I know. It wasn't forgiveness. But it wasn't rejection either. It was something in between. Something honest enough to build on. Evelyn looked at all three of them. This family doesn't need perfect repair, she said softly. It needs consistent truth from this moment forward. Even when it's uncomfortable. Even when it costs something. Emma exhaled slowly. And if it costs peace? Evelyn met her eyes. Then we stopped calling silence peace. A long silence followed that. Not heavy anymore. Just real. Then Emma's phone lit up again. Daniel. She looked at it, then at everyone in the room. And for the first time, she didn't feel like she had to choose between two lives. She could tell the truth and still build one. She answered. I'm coming home, she said. And this time, she meant all of it. Emma didn't move for a moment after saying those words. I'm coming home. It wasn't just about the house she grew up in or the man waiting somewhere across the city. It was something bigger, heavier, like she was finally stepping back into her own life after watching it fracture from the outside. Daniel's voice came through the phone, softer now. Okay, I'll be here. No pressure. No questions. Just presence. She ended the call and looked around the room. Linda was still standing near the couch, eyes red but alert. Robert sat with his elbows on his knees, like a man trying to hold himself together without knowing how. And Evelyn, Grandma Evelyn, was standing slightly apart from all of them, like she still wasn't sure she had permission to exist in this space anymore. Emma took a slow breath. I don't know what tomorrow looks like, she said. But I know tonight can't end with everyone still standing in separate corners of the same story. No one spoke. So she continued. I didn't leave my wedding because I stopped loving Daniel. I left because I couldn't keep standing in a version of my life that wasn't fully real. And I think all of us have been doing that in different ways for a very long time. Robert looked up slowly. That's true. Linda let out a small, broken laugh. That's the understatement of my life. Evelyn gave a faint nod, almost to herself. Emma walked toward her mother first. Not fast, not dramatic, just steady. Linda stiffened slightly, as if bracing for impact. But Emma didn't raise her voice. I need you to hear me clearly, she said. I'm not punishing you. I'm not cutting you off. But I also can't pretend that what happened didn't shape me in ways I'm still trying to understand. Linda nodded quickly. I understand. Emma shook her head slightly. No, I don't think you do. Not yet. But I need you to try. That hit differently. Because it wasn't rejection. It was invitation. Then Emma turned to Robert. You knew more than you said, she said quietly. Robert didn't defend himself. I did. And you still chose silence. Yes. Emma held his gaze for a moment longer. I don't hate you for protecting the family, she said finally. I just need you to accept that protecting us from truth didn't protect us from pain. Robert's shoulders dropped. I accept that. It wasn't perfect redemption, but it was honesty without escape routes. Then Emma looked at Evelyn. The room changed slightly at that moment. Because no matter how much had been revealed, Evelyn still carried the origin of it all. Emma's voice softened. You tried to hold everything together, she said. And I think you succeeded for a long time, until it cost too much. Evelyn's eyes filled again, but she didn't interrupt. Emma stepped closer. But I also need you to understand something, she continued. Love that hides truth eventually becomes a burden for the people it was meant to protect. Evelyn nodded slowly. I understand that now. A pause. Then Emma surprised even herself with what she said next. I don't want you gone. Evelyn blinked. I just don't want secrets leading us anymore. For a second, no one moved. Then Evelyn let out a slow breath, like something inside her had finally loosened after years of holding. That is something I can live with, she said quietly. The tension in the room shifted. Not gone, but different. More human. Emma looked at all three of them. This doesn't fix itself tonight, she said. But it also doesn't end here. Robert nodded. No, he agreed. It starts here. Linda wiped her face. Then we start properly. Evelyn gave a small, tired smile. Finally. Outside. The night had deepened. Emma stepped out onto the porch alone for a moment, letting the cool air hit her face. Everything inside her felt overstimulated. Too many truths, too many emotions layered on top of each other without warning. Behind her, the door opened quietly. Daniel was there. He had come. No suit. No ceremony. Just presence. Emma almost laughed when she saw him. "You really came," she said. He shrugged slightly. "You left your wedding. I figured that made this negotiable." She let out a breath that was half laugh, half relief. "Nothing about tonight is negotiable." He nodded. "Fair." They stood there for a moment. Then he looked at her carefully. "Do I get a summary?" Emma gave him a tired smile. "You don't want it." "I think I do." She hesitated, then said it simply. "My family isn't what I thought it was. And neither am I. But I'm trying to figure out what's real without destroying everything that matters." Daniel nodded slowly. "That sounds honest." "It is messy," she corrected. He smiled faintly. "So are most real things." That landed quietly between them. Emma looked back at the house, at the people inside, trying to rebuild something that had been broken long before tonight. Then she looked at Daniel again. "I don't know how to do a marriage like this," she admitted. He didn't hesitate. "Then we learn it. Simple. No speeches. No pressure. Just willingness." Emma felt something in her chest loosen slightly. Not fixed. Not healed. But no longer alone. Inside the house, Evelyn watched from the window as Emma stood with Daniel. Linda noticed her gaze. "She's changing," Linda said softly. Evelyn nodded. "She always was." Robert looked between them. "What happens now?" Evelyn didn't answer immediately. Then she said something that felt like the first real foundation of the night. "Now we stop treating truth like something that destroys families," she said, "and start learning how to let it rebuild them." Emma turned back toward the house. For the first time since the wedding, she didn't feel like she had lost her life. She felt like she had been forced to finally meet it. And this time, she was awake enough not to miss what came next. Emma stayed outside longer than she meant to. The night air had cooled, but her thoughts hadn't. Behind her, through the thin walls of the house, she could feel the presence of everyone still trying to rearrange their lives around truths that refused to sit neatly. Daniel stood beside her without speaking at first. He wasn't trying to fix the silence. He was just sharing it. Finally, Emma said quietly, "I don't even know what I'm supposed to call today anymore." Daniel gave a small, understanding nod. "Most people would call it the worst day of their life," he said. "But I don't think that fits you." Emma looked at him. "What does fit me then?" He didn't answer immediately, like he was choosing carefully. Someone who finally stopped living inside a story that didn't belong to her. That landed deeper than he probably realized. Emma looked down at her wedding dress, still stained slightly at the hem from the night's movement, still too formal for the weight of everything it had witnessed. "I left you," she said. Daniel shook his head. "You left the ceremony. Not me." Emma frowned slightly. "That doesn't feel like a small difference." "It isn't," he admitted. "But it's also not the same thing as walking away from a future." Emma let that sit. Because that was the fear underneath everything. Whether one night could quietly erase everything that came before it. Inside the house, voices shifted. Softer now. Less defensive. More tired. Emma turned slightly toward the door. "They're trying," she said. Daniel nodded. "Good." Emma hesitated. "I don't know how to balance this," she admitted. "My family, you, everything I just found out about myself. It feels like I'm standing in the middle of too many versions of the same life." Daniel looked at her. "Then don't balance it tonight," he said simply. "Just don't disappear inside it." That word again. Disappear. It followed her all night like a warning she didn't fully understand until now. Emma exhaled slowly. "I think that's what I've been doing my whole life," she said. "Not physically, just emotionally. Letting people define things so I don't have to." Daniel nodded. "That changes now." It wasn't a question. Emma looked at him for a long moment. Then she asked the only question that mattered. "Do you still want this, knowing all of it?" Daniel didn't hesitate. "I didn't marry your family," he said. "I married you." Emma's throat tightened. "And I'm not finished becoming whoever I'm going to be after tonight," she warned. He smiled faintly. "Good. I didn't want a finished version anyway." That broke something in her, quietly, gently. Not pain this time. Release. She nodded. "Okay." Inside the house, the atmosphere had shifted again. Linda was sitting now, no longer standing guard over anything. Robert had moved to the edge of the couch, shoulders less tense than before. Evelyn remained near the window, but she was no longer separate from the room. She was part of it again. Emma stepped back inside slowly. All three looked at her at once. Not with fear anymore. With awareness. Linda spoke first. Are you staying tonight? Emma paused, then nodded. Yes. A simple answer. But it mattered. Robert exhaled, almost relieved. Evelyn gave a faint nod, like she had been waiting for that answer without admitting it. Emma sat down across from them. I don't think anything goes back to how it was, she said. Linda nodded immediately. I know. Emma continued. But I also don't think this ends with us avoiding each other. Robert looked at her. No, he agreed. Avoidance is what started all of this. Evelyn spoke softly. Truth removes comfort first. Then it shows you what's actually left. Emma looked at her. And what is left? Evelyn met her gaze. People who finally know where they stand. That was it. No dramatic resolution. No perfect forgiveness. Just clarity. Later that night, Emma lay awake in the guest room she had slept in as a teenager. The same ceiling. The same faint creak in the corner. But she was not the same person anymore. Her phone lit up softly. A message from Daniel. I'm home. No pressure. Just wanted you to know I'm here. Emma stared at it for a long moment. Then replied, I don't know what I am yet. But I know I want to figure it out honestly. With you if you still want that. The reply came quickly. I do. Simple again. No demands attached. Emma set the phone down and turned toward the window. Somewhere in the house, she could hear faint movement. Not arguments. Not tension. Just people existing in the same truth for the first time in years. And for the first time since the wedding, Emma felt something unfamiliar settling in her chest. Not closure. Not happiness. But direction. Morning came slowly. No one rushed it. When Emma finally came downstairs, the house smelled faintly of coffee. Evelyn was already awake, sitting at the table. Linda was there too. Robert stood near the counter, pouring a cup but not drinking it yet. They all looked up when Emma entered. No one spoke immediately. Then Evelyn gestured gently toward the empty chair. Sit, she said. Emma did. The moment felt ordinary in a way that almost didn't make sense after everything. Linda looked at her daughter. I don't expect forgiveness quickly, she said. I just want you to know I'm not hiding anymore. Robert added quietly. Me neither. Evelyn nodded once. And I will not be the reason silence continues in this family. Emma listened. Then she said something that surprised even herself. I don't need everything fixed, she said. I just need it to be real from now on. No one disagreed. Because that was the only rule left that made sense. Later that morning, Emma and Daniel met again at a small cafe halfway between everything. Not wedding photos. Not family chaos. Just two people sitting in a quiet booth. Daniel looked at her carefully. So he said, what are we calling this now? Emma thought about it. Not a wedding day. Not an ending. Not even a restart. Finally, she said, a beginning that knows the truth. Daniel nodded. I can work with that. Emma smiled faintly. So can I. And for the first time since everything fell apart, she believed it. Because sometimes the most shocking moments in a family are not the secrets themselves. It's what happens when the silence finally ends. And people are forced to decide whether they will keep hiding, or finally learn how to stay honest in the same room. The cafe was quiet in that early morning way, where the world feels like it hasn't fully decided what kind of day it wants to be yet. Emma sat across from Daniel, watching the steam rise from his coffee, trying to understand how a single night could stretch itself across so many versions of her life. Daniel didn't rush her. He just stayed present, like he had promised. Finally, Emma spoke. I keep thinking about how easily everything looked normal, she said. Yesterday morning, I woke up thinking I was going to get married, start a life, take pictures, plan a honeymoon, and now I feel like I've lived inside 3 different lives in less than 24 hours. Daniel nodded slowly. That's what truth does when it arrives late, he said. It doesn't walk in politely. It rewrites everything it touches. Emma looked down at her hands. I don't even know where I belong anymore. Daniel leaned forward slightly. That's not true, he said gently. You just don't recognize the place you belong yet because it doesn't look like the story you planned. That stayed with her, because that was the real disruption. Not that everything had fallen apart, but that the structure she had trusted no longer matched what was real. Emma exhaled. My family is trying, she said. But trying feels different when you're rebuilding from something you all helped create. Daniel listened carefully. And you? He asked. Emma hesitated. I think I'm still angry, she admitted. Not in the explosive way anymore. Just tired anger. The kind that doesn't need to shout to exist. Daniel nodded. That's usually the kind that leads to clarity, he said. Emma gave a faint, almost tired smile. You sound very calm for someone who got abandoned at a wedding. He shrugged slightly. I didn't get abandoned. I got updated. That made her laugh. Real and unexpected. And for a moment, something eased. Not everything, but enough. Back at Linda and Robert's house, the morning felt slower than usual. Evelyn sat near the window again, but this time she wasn't looking away from the room. She was part of it. Linda moved through the kitchen, making breakfast she wasn't even sure anyone would eat. Robert sat at the table, reading the same newspaper twice without absorbing a word. The silence between them wasn't the old kind anymore. It was new, unfamiliar, not hiding anything. Evelyn finally spoke. She will come back changed. Linda looked up. She already is. Evelyn nodded. And so are we. Robert set the paper down. I keep thinking about how long we all lived around the same truth without actually touching it, he said quietly. It feels strange that it took one night for everything to surface. Evelyn's expression softened. It didn't take one night, she said. It took years of holding it in. The night was just when it finally ran out of room. That silence settled again, but it didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt honest. Later that afternoon, Emma returned. No wedding dress now. Just jeans, a simple top, hair tied back like she was trying to step into herself more than a role. When she walked in, no one reacted dramatically. No apologies rushed forward. No emotional collapse. Just recognition. Linda stood. Emma met her eyes. They didn't speak immediately. Then Linda said quietly, "Did you eat?" It wasn't avoidance. It was care. Emma nodded. Yes. That small exchange mattered more than anything else so far. Robert stood too. Daniel, he asked. Emma nodded again. We talked. Evelyn watched her closely. And Emma took a breath. And we're not pretending anything didn't happen, she said. But we're also not ending things just because everything changed. Linda let out a small breath she had clearly been holding. Evelyn gave a faint, approving nod. That's a healthy beginning, she said. Emma almost smiled. It doesn't feel healthy. It feels uncertain. Evelyn replied simply. Those are usually the same thing in disguise. That evening, Emma sat alone on the porch again. But this time, she wasn't running from anything. She was just thinking about Grandma Evelyn's sacrifices, about Linda's teenage fear, about Robert's silence, about Daniel's steadiness, about herself, how much of her life had been shaped by decisions she never witnessed being made. Her phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. I was thinking, no matter what changes, I still want to build something real with you, even if it takes time. Emma stared at it for a long moment, then replied, then we start slow, but honest. His reply came quickly. That's all I want. She set the phone down and looked out at the street. For the first time since the wedding, she wasn't trying to return to who she was. She was trying to understand who she was becoming. Inside the house, Evelyn stood beside Linda at the sink. Linda spoke quietly. Do you think she'll ever fully forgive me? Evelyn didn't lie. I don't think that's the question she's asking herself right now. Linda frowned slightly. Then what is? Evelyn looked toward the porch where Emma sat. She's asking whether love can survive truth. Linda swallowed. And can it? Evelyn paused, then answered honestly. Yes, but not the kind of love that avoids discomfort. Linda nodded slowly. That means we have to stay in it. Evelyn gave a small, tired smile. Yes, even when it's easier to run. Outside, Emma closed her eyes briefly as the wind passed through the porch. Nothing about her life was simple anymore. But for the first time, simplicity didn't feel like something she needed to chase. Because the truth had already done its work. It had broken what was false, and left behind what could actually be built on. And that was where the real story began. The days that followed did not bring closure the way people expect in stories. There was no single moment where everything suddenly felt resolved. Instead, life returned in layers. Slow, uneven, real. Emma stayed at her parents' house longer than she planned. Not because she was stuck, but because leaving felt like pretending nothing had changed again. And she was done pretending. Daniel came by 2 days later. Not with flowers. Not with questions. Just presence. He sat with Robert on the porch for almost an hour before Emma even came outside. They didn't talk about the wedding. They didn't replay the night. They talked about ordinary things, traffic, work, weather, like they were rebuilding familiarity from scratch. When Emma finally joined them, Daniel looked at her and simply said, "I'm not going anywhere unless you ask me to." That line stayed with her longer than anything else. Because for the first time, love wasn't being offered with conditions or expectations. It was being offered with patience. Inside the house, things were changing too. Linda started speaking more openly, not just about Emma, but about herself. About the years she spent trying to be the version of a daughter Evelyn needed her to be. About the pressure of carrying a truth she never felt strong enough to correct. Robert, for the first time, stopped acting like silence was neutral. He began naming things out loud, even uncomfortable ones. And Evelyn stopped disappearing into corners. She stayed present, not as the person who controlled the past, but as someone finally willing to live inside it. One evening, a week later, the family gathered around the table again. Not for celebration, just dinner. Simple food. No performance. No carefully curated happiness. At one point, Linda looked up and said quietly, "I keep waiting for this to feel normal again." Evelyn responded without looking away from her plate. "It won't feel like before," she said. "That version of us doesn't exist anymore." Emma nodded slowly. "But that doesn't mean it can't feel right in a new way," she added. Daniel, who had been invited again but still felt like he was learning where he fit, smiled slightly. "That sounds like every important thing I've ever built," he said. No one argued, because it was true. Later that night, Emma and Evelyn sat alone in the living room after everyone else had gone to bed. The house was quiet in a different way now. Not heavy, just lived in. Emma finally spoke. "I used to think the worst part of all of this was the secret," she said. Evelyn looked at her. "And now?" Emma paused. "Now I think it was the silence after it," she said. "All those years where something was wrong and no one said it out loud." Evelyn nodded slowly. "That silence protected no one," she admitted. "It only delayed the moment we had to face ourselves." Emma leaned back slightly. "Do you regret it?" she asked. Evelyn didn't answer immediately. Not because she was avoiding it. Because she was being honest. "Yes," she said finally. "But I also know I did what I thought I could survive at the time. That doesn't excuse it. It just explains it." Emma looked at her for a long moment. "I think I'm starting to understand the difference," she said quietly. Evelyn smiled faintly. "That's what healing actually looks like," she replied. "Not forgetting. Understanding." A few days later, Emma made a decision. She didn't announce it dramatically. She didn't turn it into a family moment. She simply told Daniel, "I think I want to meet him." Daniel understood immediately. "Michael?" Emma nodded. "Yes." He didn't ask why. He didn't try to talk her out of it. He just said, "Then go for yourself." Not for answers he may or may not have. For your own closure. That mattered. Because this time, no one was controlling her choice. When Emma told the family, the reactions were mixed. Linda looked worried. Robert looked guilty. Evelyn looked thoughtful. But none of them stopped her. Because they finally understood something important. Emma was no longer a story they were managing. She was a person making her own decisions. The drive to Colorado was long. Emma drove alone. Not out of isolation. Out of ownership. Daniel texted her along the way. Not constantly. Just enough. Safe. Yes. Thinking. Always. No pressure. Just checking in. That alone felt different from everything she had known before. When she finally reached the town Michael Harrison lived in, nothing felt cinematic. No dramatic music in her head. No sudden realization. Just a small street. A normal house. A man who had aged into someone unremarkable. She parked and sat for a long time before getting out. Because this wasn't about confrontation anymore. It was about completion. Not for him. For her. When she knocked, the door opened slowly. Michael stood there, confused at first. Then still. Then something like recognition, though not immediate certainty. Emma looked at him. And for the first time in her life, she said the truth without anger leading it. "I'm Emma." A pause. Then she added, "I think you've met me before, even if you don't deserve to say you know me." And in that moment, the story that had shaped her entire life finally reached the person it started with. Not to rewrite the past, but to finally stop it from defining her future. Michael didn't speak immediately. He just stood there in the doorway like his mind was trying to catch up with a memory it had spent years burying in quieter corners. His face carried the marks of time, but not the kind that explained anything. Just age, distance, and a life that had moved forward without waiting for the consequences of what he left behind. Emma didn't step inside. She didn't want that kind of control over the moment. She stayed exactly where she was, hands steady, voice calmer than she expected. Michael finally cleared his throat. I don't know what to say. Emma nodded slightly. That seems to be a pattern in my life. That landed heavier than she intended, because it wasn't said with anger anymore. It was said like observation, like someone studying a recurring truth. Michael looked past her for a second, then back at her face. You're Linda's daughter. Emma didn't correct him. Not because it was wrong, but because it wasn't enough. I'm your daughter too, she said simply. The words didn't come with emotion attached to them. They came like facts finally placed on a table that had been empty too long. Michael's expression tightened. I didn't know how to. Emma raised her hand gently, stopping him. No, she said. Don't start there. A silence followed. The kind that strips away rehearsed apologies before they can take shape. Emma continued. I didn't come here for a performance. I didn't come here for a version of regret you've had time to polish. Michael lowered his eyes slightly. I have thought about you, he said quietly. Emma nodded. I'm sure you have. Another pause. Then she asked the question she had carried all the way across states. Did you ever try to come back? Michael hesitated. Once. Emma waited. He exhaled slowly. I asked your grandfather, Robert, if I could see you. He told me you were safe, that your life was stable, that it would only confuse things if I reappeared. Emma let that sit. So you accepted that. Michael looked uncomfortable. I thought it was the right thing. I didn't want to disrupt your life. Emma's voice stayed steady. You didn't disrupt it, she said. You created it, then left before it started. That truth hung between them, without needing reinforcement. Michael swallowed. I didn't handle it well. Emma nodded again. That's the most honest thing you've said so far. Another silence. This one longer. Less defensive. More exposed. Michael finally stepped back slightly from the door. Do you want to come in? Emma looked at the doorway. She thought about it. Not emotionally. Practically. What would change if she stepped inside? Nothing about her past would rearrange itself. Nothing would suddenly make sense. But she had also not come here for change. She had come for acknowledgement. So she shook her head. No, she said. I think if I go in there, this becomes something it isn't. Michael frowned slightly. And what is it? Emma answered honestly. The end of me wondering who you are. That was it. Not forgiveness. Not reconciliation. Just completion. Michael nodded slowly, as if he understood that distinction better than anything else she had said. I don't expect anything from you, he said quietly. Emma almost smiled, but it didn't fully form. That's good, she said, because I don't have anything to give you. That wasn't cruelty. It was clarity. A boundary formed not from anger, but from self-respect. She adjusted her bag slightly on her shoulder. I spent most of my life trying to fill in a blank space, she said. Turns out the space wasn't meant to be filled. It was meant to be understood. Michael looked at her, something uncertain in his expression. I'm sorry, he said again, but this time it sounded less rehearsed. Emma nodded once. I believe you, she said, but belief isn't the same as repair. That distinction mattered, because for so long, she had been surrounded by apologies that were mistaken for resolution. She stepped back slightly. I don't hate you, she added after a moment. I also don't need you. Michael nodded slowly, accepting that in a way that felt like the first real thing between them. Emma turned to leave, but then she stopped. Not because she changed her mind, but because she wanted to end it fully, without lingering shadows. She looked back once. I have a life I'm building, she said, and I'm not building it around this anymore. Michael nodded again. I understand. And for the first time, he probably did. Emma turned and walked away. Not fast, not emotional, just forward. The drive back felt different. Not lighter, but unanchored in a way that allowed space to exist again. She didn't call anyone immediately. Not Daniel. Not her family. Not even herself through thought. She just drove, letting miles replace noise. When she finally returned home, it was evening. Daniel was waiting outside again. He didn't ask how it went immediately. He just looked at her and said, You came back. Emma nodded. Yes. That was enough for him to step closer. Do you feel different? He asked. Emma thought about it honestly. Yes, she said, but not fixed, just less pulled in two directions. Daniel nodded. That's usually how it starts. Emma gave a faint smile. I met him. I figured. She looked at him. It wasn't what I expected. Daniel raised an eyebrow slightly. What were you expecting? Emma paused. Closure, she said. But I think closure is a word people use when they don't want to admit things don't neatly close. Daniel smiled faintly. That's probably accurate. They stood there for a moment. Then Emma added something softer. I think I stopped needing him to be something specific in my life. Daniel nodded. That sounds like progress. Emma looked at him carefully. I'm still figuring out what I need you to be, she admitted. He didn't flinch. I'm okay with that, he said. As long as it's real. That word again. Real. It kept returning. Inside the house, life was no longer tense in the same way it had been before. It was quieter, more intentional. Linda was in the kitchen. Robert was reading. Evelyn was resting. But nothing felt hidden anymore. Emma walked inside, and everyone looked up. No sok, no urgency, just presence. Linda spoke first. How was it? Emma paused, then answered simply. It ended something. Robert nodded slowly. And started something else? Emma thought about it. Yes, she said, but not in the way I thought it would. Evelyn, from her chair, looked at her carefully. That's usually how truth works, she said softly. It rarely behaves the way we imagine. Emma nodded. I think I understand that now. And for the first time since the wedding night, the weight inside her chest wasn't confusion. It was structure, not fully formed, but real enough to build on. Later that night, Emma stood alone by the window again. But this time, she wasn't trying to escape anything. She was just existing inside her life as it now was. Daniel texted, Still here if you need me. Emma replied, I don't need saving, just staying. His response came quickly. I could do staying. Emma smiled faintly, and for the first time, she believed that what came next didn't have to be dramatic to be meaningful. Because sometimes the end of a mystery isn't a final answer. It's the moment you stop letting it define every direction you move in. And Emma finally moved forward. Emma stayed by the window long after the messages stopped. Not because she was waiting for anything else, but because stillness felt unfamiliar now. For so long, her life had been driven by questions she didn't know she was carrying. Who is he? Why was I hidden? What really happened? And now that some of those answers existed, the silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt new. Downstairs, the house had settled into night. Not the old kind of silence that came from avoidance. This one was different. It came from exhaustion and acceptance. The next morning didn't arrive with any dramatic shift. There was no sudden healing. No family breakthrough moment where everyone laughed and cried at once. Just ordinary light coming through curtains. Just people waking up and remembering they were still here. Still together. Still figuring it out. Emma came downstairs first. Linda was already in the kitchen, making coffee. Robert was outside, fixing something that didn't look broken. And Evelyn was sitting at the table, reading a folded piece of paper like it had been read 100 times before. Emma noticed it immediately. That's new, she said gently. Evelyn looked up. It's not new, she replied. Just finally being read properly. Emma walked closer and sat down. What is it? Evelyn hesitated only slightly before sliding it across the table. It was a letter. Not from Michael. Not from the past Emma had just confronted. But from Evelyn herself. Written long ago. Faded ink. Careful handwriting. Emma didn't open it immediately. She looked at Evelyn first. You wrote this a long time ago. Evelyn nodded. When I first decided I couldn't keep carrying everything alone. Emma frowned slightly. And you never sent it. No, Evelyn said quietly. Because I thought keeping it would protect everyone longer. Emma looked at the letter again, then slowly unfolded it. It wasn't long, but every line carried weight. Not dramatic confessions. Just truth that had been postponed. Evelyn's words spoke about fear. About the belief that silence could preserve stability. About the way she had tried to hold 3 generations of pain inside one household without letting it spill. And at the end, there was one sentence that stayed with Emma longer than the rest. One day, the truth will stop being something I carry alone. And I hope when that day comes, my family will not only see what was hidden, but understand why I was afraid to say it. Emma lowered the letter slowly. The room felt still again, but not heavy, just real. Linda noticed her expression. What is it? Emma didn't answer immediately. Then she said softly, it explains a lot, but it doesn't fix everything. Robert walked in from outside at that moment, wiping his hands. What doesn't fix everything? He asked. Emma held the letter up slightly. This. Evelyn didn't look away. I never expected it to fix anything, she said. Only to be understood eventually. Emma looked at her grandmother carefully. I think I understand you more now than I ever did, she admitted. Evelyn gave a small nod. That's all I wanted. Later that day, Emma met Daniel again. Not at home, not around family, just somewhere simple. Neutral ground. He looked at her when she arrived and immediately noticed something had shifted. You seem quieter, he said. Emma sat down. I think I'm done chasing answers that don't change anything anymore. Daniel studied her. That sounds like acceptance. Emma shook her head slightly. No, she corrected. It feels more like choosing what matters now that I know the past can't be rewritten. Daniel nodded slowly. That's better than acceptance. Emma looked at him. Is it? Yeah, he said. Acceptance is passive. What you just described is active. That distinction mattered. More than she expected. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Daniel asked carefully, are you okay staying in this relationship while everything else in your life is still shifting? Emma didn't hesitate. I don't want perfect timing, she said. I want honesty while things are shifting. Daniel smiled faintly. That I can do. Emma exhaled slowly. I think I'm learning that I don't need everything stable to keep building something real. Daniel nodded. Good. Because most real things are built in motion. When Emma returned home that evening, the house felt different again, but not because anything had changed externally. It was because she had changed internally. She noticed small things now. The way Linda didn't avoid eye contact anymore. The way Robert spoke before assumptions formed. The way Evelyn no longer disappeared into corners of her own guilt. Everyone was still imperfect, still carrying things, but no longer hiding them in the same way. That night, Emma stood in the middle of the living room after everyone had gone to bed. She looked around the house that had once been full of unanswered questions. Now it was full of unfinished conversations instead. And somehow, that felt healthier. Her phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. I'm not asking where you are emotionally anymore. Just wanted you to know I'm proud of you for staying in your life instead of running from it. Emma read it twice, then replied, I think I finally understand what staying actually means. His response came quickly. Tell me. Emma paused, then typed. It means you don't leave just because things stop being simple. A short pause. Then Daniel. Then I'm staying too. Emma set the phone down, and for the first time, she wasn't standing in the middle of a broken story. She was standing at the beginning of one she could actually shape. Not because the past disappeared, but because it no longer controlled every direction she could go. And that was the real ending of the silence. Not its disappearance, but its loss of power.